Welcome to Behind the Catch Fence. I'm your host, David Hoffman. The Indianapolis 500 is fast approaching, and as our coverage continues, we have a very special guest joining us. Most of you know him from his famed spin and win at Indy. On the 40th anniversary of his historic victory, we welcome 1985 Indy 500 winner Danny Sullivan. Danny, how you doing today?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on, David. I appreciate it.
Great to have you here. Obviously, it's 40th anniversary. Pretty crazy to say that it's been
I
40
know.
years. When you hear
Yeah.
that number, what comes to mind?
Well, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it doesn't seem also like it was yesterday. It still feels like it was a good 20, 25 years ago. But I mean, I'm telling you, it's just it's crazy. And it's funny because almost everybody that's there racing, most of them, I don't think were even born or alive or around when I spun and won. So it's they're probably going, who is this guy? Anyway, it's all good. The folks at Indy and the feedback's been tremendous, and going back this year and going to celebrate with a bunch of friends back there. So it should be good.
It's gonna be a lot of fun for sure. And looking back, obviously you've run an Indy for a number of years, and looking back, let's go all the way back to first practice session, first time you're ever seeing Indy and seeing it in all its glory. Just what was your first impression of Indianapolis?
Well, to be honest with you, it's pretty daunting. Even when we did the rookie test, when nobody's there when you're doing the rookie test, it's pretty empty and the grandstands are empty, but it's a massive place. And, you go out there and it's like, okay, you can run 180 miles an hour and you got to run a couple of laps at that. And I don't know all the protocol now, but then you go to the next speed and you go to the next speed. And then after a while, they go, okay, you can go out and run as much as you want over 200 miles an hour. Now, remember, that was more than 40 years ago. That was 43, yeah, 3 years ago when I did my rookie test. So the speeds have changed quite a bit and also let's not forget it was just tires were different. Everything was different. Stagger, pop-off valve. They use pop-off valves. Nobody even remembers what a pop-off valve was. To control the boost and the plenum and that. And so it was a whole different beast back then. 5-speed manual gearbox, didn't change gear, stagger on the tires because they were using a bias ply as opposed to, cross ply, different things like that. And I'm sure in 40 years time from right now, they'll go back and say, gosh, those cars were really antiquated. But the pressure, it's a huge deal. I have said this over the time too. For me, in motorsport, the most difficult thing that I've ever had to do in motorsport is the 4-lap, 10-mile qualifying run at Indy because it's 10 laps. I mean, 10 miles. It's 4 laps. It's not one lap. They don't take your fastest of one or anything like that. And if your car is not right, it's almost impossible to get in there. And I mean, look, 1 year Penske, two cars with two-time champions didn't qualify. So it's Indy's a tough place, and just because the speeds are so great, but it's so fine. You're where the line is and how you can run and so forth. But fond memories for sure, and some tough ones.
For sure. And before we get to 1985 and that obviously really historic moment for you, when you mentioned the that's the one thing that I'm watching on TV or I'm at the track and you're watching the 4 laps and it just, you can feel the intensity. You can feel in like every little movement, or are they moving their hands a lot? Going through that, you mentioned how like stressful that is. Like, I guess how do you kind of find that balance and make sure you're not overdoing it to the point where you could end up wrecking or something like that?
Well, the reality is if you're kind of on the cut line, if you like, if your car's not quite good enough and you're really having to push it, that's when it becomes a big pressure cooker. If your car is good, although the pole's important, the front row's important, it's in the whole scheme of things for winning the race, it's not that important. And so if your car is good, you're just thinking, okay, I want to get it in the show. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm not going to take any chances, on that thing, but I'm just going to push it as hard as I can. Further down the line, when you're down there, and especially back in the day too, we had more than 33 cars trying to qualify. Now, some of them were spare cars. There was, hell, sometimes there was 50, 60 cars there trying to get in the show. So, bump day was a big deal. And if they wave you off, you're out there like this on the limit for 10 miles, 4 laps, and you come off of the turn four and they wave it off. You're like, oh gosh, I got to do this again, and but you're also trying to work and find out what it is. Indy's one of those places, and I'm not saying other tracks aren't the same way, but Indy in particular, because we're there. They've shortened it up, but we used to be there for 3.5 weeks. I mean, running all the time. Now they'll have a very intense day today, all this week for the qualifying and so forth. But you're running so much, and you're all of a sudden you're like, here's the funny part. You come back and they do it, most places they do it by time, and they do it by time there as well, but they post the speed, like let's just say 25.1, okay? Well, I remember one time coming back, Rick was in the team and Emerson was in the team, and we were running like 228, and I had a 227, and I almost couldn't get a ride back on the golf cart because I wasn't fast enough. It was just, but when you look at the time, that's what, a tenth of a second here and there, a tenth of a second there, but it just magnifies at Indy, and it's all about the speed. It's all about, it never, the pressure never goes away.
Obviously, the pressure I'm sure mounted when 1985, you're passing below Mario for the lead, and all of a sudden, I was watching the replay, and like all of a sudden, just kind of kicks out a little bit, and then it's like, oh no, and you
Yeah.
spin, and then all of a sudden, and somehow you're able to catch it and keep rolling after like a 360 or two. I mean, when you're in at that point, when you start to, feel it kind of tip out from under you, what are you thinking inside?
Well, the car, let me go back and walk through a couple things because a lot of people said, why did I pass going into one and not like into three? And I did it again when I made the pass stick. It was going into one. My car was a little bit quicker off of three and four, and we were about equal off of one and two. Okay, so I had a little bit more of a run on him down there. And in those days, if you remember, the apron was just a little bit. And the one thing in Indy too, because cars are out running on, they paint those lines every night. They paint the lines, the two striped lines. And eventually you don't laugh, but it builds up to, that little bit transfer there. Then you're running stagger, or we were then a higher right side tire. Again, in the whole circumference of that tire, the difference is the thickness of a matchbook cover. Okay. That's all that, but it can change the balance of the car. And when it started to move, I tried to correct it. But again, in those days, you had a stiffer side right spring to keep the car, turning left and more pushing left on there, get more work than in temperature on the left side tires. And it just started to turn back, and it was going to go like that nose first. And that I wouldn't be sitting here having an interview with you today on a situation like that. And we were doing, I don't know, 215 or something like that, 215 miles an hour. And it turned around, and I just was like, oh my, I just got in the lead of the Indy 500. Now I'm going to hit the fence. It spun, smoke then cleared, and I'm looking at the turn two sweet. So I had enough presence to take my foot off the brake. And if you watch the tape again, go back and watch it. When you see me go into two, you'll see the car do this, do that, because I've got the engine's dead, but I've got the clutch in. Okay, it's a 5 speed, 3 speed up gears to get out of the pits, and then two top gears that were only 250, 300 RPM difference. So if you were racing a guy, you'd be in the lower one for more RPM. But if you were trying to save fuel and you were just running by yourself, you'd have the other one. Well, I don't know to this day what gear I jump started the thing, because I thought if I go too low, we have no idea how fast we're going. There's no speedo in the car. You're just guessing. So it's like, okay, what gear? And as I sit here today, I do not know what happened, but I almost lost it again. It snapped on me again because it jump started. So anyway, the funny part is that the amount of time I just took to describe all that, that's all what's going through your mind in the whatever it was, 2 seconds or, what, I've never timed it, but it's a short period of time when all that happened. And the other thing that was important is that when the spin occurred, the reason that I was lucky enough to stay off of the fence is that the um, that we were further around the corner. So I was almost more to the short chute. So it wasn't where the track was still turning. It was almost going up a little bit more straight. And that's why, and then Mario, and of course, having somebody like Mario behind me added to the experience because he was calm in the whole situation and knew what to do. So there you go. That's a spin to win.
Obviously, following that spin, it kind of played in your favor because then you're able to get on that same strategy as Mario and everyone up there, and then you kind of cruise the final 60 or 61 laps. At what point during that race, after the spin part, did you really think like, man, it might be our day to do this?
Well, there was an incident part of the way through the race. I do not know what lap where Tom Sneva and Howdy Holmes got together going into turn one, and I was thinking going down I was about to lap them, and going down the straightaway. I thought, excuse me, I thought Howdy's maybe not late in the race as alert as we, not that he wasn't, but it's just, you look at people on reputation and they'd had some incidents late in the races and stuff like that. So I luckily rolled off of it and they touched. Neva spun and then he didn't go either way. He just went right on the line. And normally they go up or they go down. And I just missed him from hitting him. And I thought, okay, things are going a little bit my way today. Maybe, maybe. But to be honest with you, I never relaxed until I was halfway off of turn four to the checkered flag on the last lap. Never relaxed because if you remember, um, there was I think it was one of the Whittingtons crashed with 7 laps to go, and I had a pretty good cushion. When I say pretty good, 2 or 3 seconds or something, maybe 4 seconds on Mario at that time and the yellow comes out. So now we bumped up. So I look in my mirrors, and Michael's one of the cars behind me, and then somebody else that I don't know or don't remember. I shouldn't say don't know, but I don't remember who it was. And then Mario. And I thought, well, Michael's not going to hold him up, and I don't know about the other guy, but Mario's, I mean, he's one of the best, if not the best. He's phenomenal and he's not going to get snookered on this restart. And I kept saying, "Oh, tell him to go faster with a pace car." But anyway, so we restarted with 4 laps to go, and if I could have put tape over my mirrors, I would have taped them because I didn't want to see what was going on behind it. I just tried to stay focused, and I think my fastest lap in the race was like the second to the last lap. I was just so intent, just make it, stay on the throttle, make all your marks, get through smooth, smooth, smooth. And then finally coming off the turn four, about halfway down on the last lap, I took a peek and that was it. So, but it's never over until you cross that flag, get the checkered flag. It's just still going.
And the cool part that I found out with the car, as doing some research, is the car you drove was the March 85C. It has a cool bit of history behind it, with it being, engineer Adrian Newey's only Indy 500 winning car.
Right.
What were some of the aspects of that race car that made it into an eventual winner and something that you knew was going to be, really good on race day?
Well, of course, we knew Adrian, but you didn't know Adrian. He's just a guy designing a car that works at March Cars, and he was a guy that penned the car and stuff like that. But Adrian, who I've become closer with over time, just by doing some stuff in Formula One and so forth, and just some historic racing and so forth. But Roger wanted to build his own car, which of course came after that, the PC 15, 16, 17, and so forth, because he had the whole facility over in England. And we weren't involved, Rick and I weren't involved in the input of whether March, Lola, and some of them had been hot one year when I drove for Shearson the year before. The Lola was a really good car. But I also think that Carl Haas didn't want, he was a Lola importer. He didn't want to sell the cars to Penske. And March was keen to get in with somebody like that because they ended up selling a ton of cars over the years because of that relationship. And so we weren't really, when I say we, the drivers aren't really, Roger's making the decisions on that. He might ask our input, but at that time, Adrian didn't have the reputation he does now. And it's just kind of like, hey, you tell us. So, and they had made the decision for that car. Don't forget, I didn't join the team until December of '84. So I was, and those guys were way ahead of the curve on that, already having made decisions on chassis.
And you hear just how when you win the Indy 500, it changes a driver's life, and that can be many different things. But for you, when you cross that finish line, you're now pronounced the Indy 500 winner. How has that changed your life, not only at that moment, but now as well?
Well, I think when it first happens, obviously you're sucked up into all the hoopla and everything's going on, and they're taking you here in the press room, and they're doing the pace car ride around, and everybody's doing the celebration and so forth. Um, but you're I don't know if you know this, but it was the last non-live broadcast on ABC. It was played at night because it was Memorial Day weekend. They didn't want to lose the crowd, so they tape delayed it. And it wasn't like they were showing it that night. So the celebration went on, and then I'm whisked off to go do this and that, and Good Morning America, different shows, and da 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 da. But let's not forget, next Friday is practice at Milwaukee, right? So you quickly get kind of slapped out back into the reality of, okay, I won last weekend, but I got to qualify now. And uh, it's a great thing, but it took me, I tell you what, it took me probably 2 months because your schedules become insane. You're going here, you're going there. You don't have time to think. You're, sleeping. Then you go into the track. Then we got that race, and I think we went to Portland. It just goes on and on. And then I think in July one time I was there, and I go, you know, you won the Indy 500. It just takes, for me anyway. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody. It just takes a while for it to settle in, and it's one of those things. I won two Pocono 500s. I won a Michigan 500, and you know, it's not the same. I remember checking in for a flight one time, and they my profile on the deal, and it said, and the girl goes, "Oh, you won the Indy 500?" I said, "What? How do you know that?" It was in the profile. So that's just kind of the importance that goes with it, and great honor. But like I said, 40 years ago, how old are you now?
26.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you weren't even close to around at that time. So, but even when I did the Red Bull driver search program, all these kids I get and talk in front of them, I said, "You all have no idea who I am or what I did in racing," and they're all like, "No." It's okay. It's okay. We're all generational. I mean, not everybody studies history, and that's fine.
The
But
only history I even remotely even studies racing. So, I mean,
I hear you. I hear you. But anyway, all good. All good.
yeah, and obviously I thought it was cool. I saw a video a couple weeks ago at Doug Bowles. When they had a little video on the
Oh,
IMS on their social media where Doug took you into and showed you the bronze badge, which every
yeah.
every fan that's in the garage has one now for this year with
Yeah.
the 40th anniversary. I mean, what comes to mind when you see something like that engraved and like as
Oh, I
cool as the
was
bronze badge is?
I was like almost in tears. I mean, I was taken aback. It's nothing that one ever thinks about. Remember, I think in 109 runnings, there's only been six drivers or something on there. Somebody told me some number, and I was like, really? But anyway, I mean, it's very special, and it's going to be. We're bringing some guests this year and so forth, and they don't know it, but and they probably won't even look at it. It's kind of like, hey, put this on, you have your back on there and everything, and then they take a closer look at the badge. So it was, he actually showed me because they mill that out of a solid piece. And he actually had the solid piece with the mill. I got it, and it's amazing. I mean, I'm so honored. Anyway,
And it's
thank you.
super cool because yeah, you even have your livery out there as well on track with Jacob Abel running that fellow Kentucky native as well. To
Yeah.
see that, I mean, that's got to be pretty cool to see
Yeah,
something.
it's fun. I mean, I like that um, they're doing something like this, and it's a great honor. It's a great honor. And thankfully, I didn't have to wait till my 50th anniversary or something like that. So I might not be around when all that's going on. But anyway, listen, everything at Speedway, I think that's probably a correct term. It's a great honor to be an Indy 500 champion and everything that it goes with it. And I think the Speedway, from the Holman George family before, now with Penske's, everything like that, they really do a special job to celebrate, you and your accomplishments.
And final question for me, recently you and Tony Stewart had the cool thing of doing Racers Roundtable with Mav TV. And I heard that was something that's kind of been in the works for a heck of a lot of years.
Well,
Yeah, how did that come about?
the idea started for me from a long time ago believe it or not, at a private dinner in England with Sterling Moss, and he was celebrating a birthday, and there was Carol Shelby at the table, and Dan Gurney and Phil Hill, and list just goes on, and they all started talking about their experiences with the commendatore Enzo Ferrari, and I'm just sitting there going, they weren't rude stories or anything. They were just stories about dealing with him and what it was like to drive for him and different things. And and then later on, I was signing some autographs for a golf charity thing, and it was only four of us, and Michael Jordan and Larry Bird started talking stories about the NBA. And again, there was nothing rude, there was nothing crass, there was not, these were just stories, you know. And I thought to myself, we've got to capture that, because you think about sitting at that dinner. I tried to do it for almost 14 years, and then Bill Armour actually pitched it, and they said, "Hell, we'll do that." But you think about it, since I tried to do it, Parnelli Jones is gone. Okay. Dan Gurney's gone. Carol Shelby's gone. Phil Hill's gone. I'm just talking about American racers. And to capture those stories before they're gone is what the whole thing about. Like Jerry Seinfeld said, it's a show about nothing. It is, it's just the stories. It's just sitting around with your buddies at your local bar and start telling stories. And but the turnout for us and the people that came and the stories they told was just magic. And to be able to do it with Tony Stewart, because one thing about racing, we have so many genres of racing, which baseball doesn't have. I mean, okay, they got baseball, hardball, softball, some stuff like that. But in racing, we start with motorcycles and just keep going, drag different classes and drag racing, da 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 da. It just goes on and on and on. And I think that's so. Racers Roundtable, we really tried to capture that, and to have the pleasure and honor to do it with Tony, because he's in the Hall of Fame in most of those, in sprint cars and all that kind of all the different categories. And so it wasn't going to be as interesting for me to get the stories out of everybody as it was when we co-hosted it. And he and I had a blast to do it. I mean, I think I'm speaking for him, but we had more fun to do it. And the groups that came through, and everybody was running into the other groups because we were kind of doing show to show, one after the other. It was very special.
I was gonna say
So
it's got to be pretty cool because you bring it's one thing to like us sitting down doing an interview or something else, but to have all these different racers and just sort of we don't have like an agenda. It's just let's just see what happens, see what kind of because it's one of those things where you want to hear this random thing that maybe someone maybe one of the drivers had never even thought of before. It just kind of keeps sparking up a conversation and to me that's that's what made it very raw and really cool to be able to hear everyone just kind of sipping a little bit of wine and just talking about whatever
yeah,
kind of happened.
that was the thing. It's just, stories, and but I mean, Pam Miller and Bill Armour, they produced it and they did a great crew. And the MAV TV folks, they pushed out the boat for us and we shot it on one of their houses, and it was just over the top. Everybody came in. There was a lot more that wanted to come in, but we just couldn't get logistically to get it to work into everybody's schedule. So hopefully there'll be a season two coming. Stay
Uh,
tuned.
that would be cool. We'll have to we'll have to keep watch for that. Well, Danny, I appreciate taking the time. Hopefully, you feel better here soon. You can enjoy going back to Indy here and just soaking up 40th anniversary. I'm sure you're going to be asked a lot of questions, asked for sign a lot of things. But it's great to have you on, and hopefully you really enjoy that time.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it.